How's it going, everybody? I hope you're having a fantastic day. It is pretty nice here in sunny Minnesota. We got 76 degrees, which is an absolute lie based on how it actually feels outside. That's just the metal on my car. Anyway, what I want to discuss today is, well, a couple of things. First of all, I had a meeting today with my kid's therapist, and something interesting happened. I went to, right away, they started talking about, it was between myself, my ex-wife, and the therapist. They started talking about getting my kids tested. They didn't specify at all, and I said, excuse me, just, I'm going to state this up front. I'm going to be a huge obstruction when it comes to putting my kids on stimulant medication. And man, they did not like that. They took that as an accusation. And so I went to start recording just so I didn't get thrown under the bus. And immediately the lady is like, no, it's illegal for you to record. Well, here's what I want to say. It's not. It's not illegal for you to record a therapy appointment. In fact, you know, she asked me to write her up a summary of what I hoped for, and at the end I said, well, hey, too bad we can't record, right? And it turns out, you know, I could have recorded. It's she cited HIPAA, but only the provider is bound by HIPAA. You're not bound by HIPAA, so don't let people, if you go into, like, if you're recording from public property, a clinic or something, like an abortion clinic, don't let them fool you and trick you into stopping because of HIPAA. That has nothing to do with you. And they probably believe it does, but they're wrong, and they won't even admit that they're wrong after they check the law, but it doesn't matter because they are wrong. Anyway, so something that I think really needs to be stressed is that not only are cops allowed to lie to you, it's promoted. They don't see you as the same level of being as they are. They just don't. It's trained out of them, and there's no way to convince them otherwise, because they see you as everybody, as potentially the person that will end their life. And what that is purposely inserted mind control, PTSD. They have essentially pre-crimed PTSD into their heads through training. And that is a really big deal, because once you affect somebody's, what would you call it, their mortality, there's nothing else that's going to come before that. So when they're told they can lie to you and to further their investigation, because if they don't lie to you, you might catch on and produce a weapon, man, they're going to lie to you. They see you as the person that's going to shoot them into their grave. There's just no two ways about it. And as long as they see you and I as such, laws will only continue to get more restrictive, and there will never be a point at which these people say, you know what, I can't enforce these laws, because they believe that they are right. And anything that they're told to do, therefore, is right. They are order followers. Order followers cannot be trusted. They are the closest thing to being just soulless entities as one can possibly be. Because think about it. Their orders take precedent over their conscience 9 times out of 10, don't they? How many times do their orders violate rights where the cops say, I know this is wrong. I've seen it plenty of times. They'll say, I know you're right, man, but I just got to do my job. that is putting tyranny ahead of one's conscience. And anybody who has even the capacity to do that is very corrupt. Their soul has been corrupted, and there's no two ways about it. And so what? We got a couple of options once we come to that realization. One option is not a really good option because they hold the monopoly on force. They don't really, but most of us have stuff to lose, right? So that's not an option. Even though we, the people, will always hold the monopoly on force until we give that up, they use our loved ones against us, basically. They take us away from them, all of this and that. So none of us want our kids to grow up without parents. So what do we do then? Well, there's a couple of options left. One, we can just ignore them and go about doing what we do and stop feeding the system. See, a lot of people have gotten to the point where they're fed up by having these laws and taxes or these laws enforced at by their tax dollars, but they still have yet to come to the point that they promote that very trend by continuing to pay their taxes. And I know it's scary because it's something we've all been told that we have to do. But man, you really can't say much about, what's going on if you're continuing to feed it. That would be like having an alligator outside your house, and every day this alligator tries to bite you every time you feed it. But you continue to feed it because it's what you've always done. And not only does this alligator try to bite you, sometimes it does. Sometimes it bites a toe. One time it bit your leg so bad you had to go to the hospital. And it also tries to bite any of your relatives. Would you keep feeding that alligator? No, you wouldn't. But here's the thing. Most people cannot understand that. And they will put authority before they put anything else. And Stanley Milgram showed that with his experiment. Brian from Here's the Deal mentioned that today, and it's a really good point. What he did was he made a study where he asked for volunteers, and the ones that volunteered to run the test were actually the ones being tested, and they were instructed to hit a button every time somebody answered a question incorrectly, which would then give that the answerer an electric shock. And each time they would hit the button, they would hear the reaction of that person getting shocked, even though it was an actor on the other end speaking into a microphone. And they would say all sorts of stuff up until dying. Okay? And you know what? Even as the ones getting shocked cried out for mercy and begged for help and begged to have that stop, 70% of people, at least I think 70, went along with it. But the crazy thing is that Brian mentioned is so many of them asked. They asked permission to stop, but when they weren't given permission, they didn't stop. Even though they volunteered with their own free will, they volunteered for this program. They gave up their free will the second somebody with authority came along, and that's why nobody will ever, not enough people will ever get uncomfortable enough to stop feeding that alligator, because they can't understand how things will get done. They can't understand how roads will get fixed. Well, man, how many trips have you come along with me And I'll tell you, man, none of these roads are fixed. I grew up in Chicago where they've got a toll road. That was supposed to go for like a year, maybe 5 years. I forget exactly how long because I was just either just born or not born yet when it started. But I'm 40 and they're still collecting tolls. People get used to it. And I know I harp on this all the time, but that's how it happens. It happens incrementally because people get used to, they get conditioned to their state of equilibrium. And the state of equilibrium today seems no different than their state of equilibrium yesterday, even if it is. So very little at one time or another has to actually change. It just has to be an ever so gradual shift towards where we are now. A free country that is totally infested with tyrannical laws that do absolutely nothing to keep anybody safe. They don't do their job. All they do is give fodder for the government to make money from. And is that what we want? I would love to get some answers here because, whether it's the left or the right, they all say that their side is the answer, but without both of them, we wouldn't have gotten here. Not one of those sides has solved a single issue. All they do is deflect. All they do is throw it back onto you. They blame you and I for the problems that they cause. Did you know that a city, I forget where, or a village, town, whatever, a group of Americans has been told that they need to find another source of electricity for their community because it's being taken by a data center. Dude, we've lost control. We've lost control. And the only way to kind of gain control is to just stop listening, stop complying. That doesn't mean be bad. In fact, it means the opposite. It means be the best version of yourself that you can be, but stop doing anything extraneous that they tell you to do. Stop renewing your license. Stop renewing your registration. I'm halfway there. And the only reason I'm not fully there is because I don't want the family blowback right now from people I depend on and whom I love and my kids need. So I'm not. There's a few fights that I'm not willing to undertake quite yet. But that's the only answer. All it requires is saying, I'm done. I'm done. Think about it like an addiction. Everybody knows that heroin is bad. Every addict knows that they need to quit dope. I was a heroin addict, and I've never met a heroin addict that is happy to be addicted to heroin. We're not really that far socially from exactly that. We are just purely addicted to something that is sapping our very existence and our very souls, and it's time to give up on it. That I remember the day that I realized I needed to quit heroin. Oh man. And I remember the day that I did quit. It was the day that I did quit that was really freeing because I knew it was going to hurt, and it did. It almost killed me. I had a seizure after, I shit you not, 2 weeks of no sleep. Full 14 nights I stayed awake, and I had a really bad seizure, but man, was it ever worth it. I wouldn't touch that demon if my life depended on it. It sucked all of my money. At least half of everything that I had went to heroin. It sucked up my social life, and it ate away at my relationships. And how is that any different than what the government's doing? They're stealing our money for shit that makes our lives worse. They're dividing families that, my dad and his cousin, my uncle, who I named my son after, man, they used to be such great friends, but they don't speak to each other anymore over some stupid bullshit called politics. They agree on everything. They agree on everything that matters, except who to vote for, because they think that who they vote for is an indication of their hearts, and to an extent, it has become so. That's personally why I don't partake in that activity, because, my soul can't justify signing off on any of the shit that politicians do. I don't want a single part of that. I don't want to be blamed for the deaths. I don't want to be blamed for the economy. And you know what? I would be right to be blamed. That would be the correct thing to do, because it was my gusto, not for any particular politician, but for the system itself. Just voting, you are giving your energy and your consent. Your consent being one of the most sacred and important things you can ever have. It's like the second word that every kid learns is no after mom. That's how important no is. But adults now have lost the ability to say no to people that they know don't give a shit about them. Fix it.